Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating, how we humans interact with natural rhythms and, honestly, our entire concept of time. Now, we live in an age of digital calendars and smartphone alarms, right? But long before any of that existed, people had to figure out how to synchronize their lives with the Earth itself. So we're going to look at one of the most sophisticated, ancient systems ever created to do exactly that. And we'll see how it just beautifully maps the relationship between a specific physical landscape and the people who actually live there. Picture this for a second. Long before we all had global time zones, when sweeping landscapes transitioned from spring blossoms to winter snow, how did cultures actually build systems to track time? Well, the answer almost always comes back to one thing: survival, and specifically, agriculture. People desperately needed a reliable way to know exactly when the earth would thaw, when the monsoon rains would finally hit, and when the frost would descend. Basically, they needed to be able to read the landscape like a giant clock. So that actually brings us to a pretty massive question. How do we fundamentally measure the flow of seasons? Because it's not just about stepping outside and saying, oh, hey, it feels hotter today. It's about breaking down the really subtle incremental shifts in nature. Things like the changing behavior of local animals, specific types of precipitation, or even the exact angle of the sun, and then turning all those tiny observations into a solid, repeatable schedule. Well, the ancient Chinese answer to this is honestly brilliant. It's often called the seasonal wheel, or the river of time, and it introduces us to the traditional Chinese 24 solar terms. Now, the absolute key thing to grasp here is that this isn't just some abstract calendar you buy at a store and hang on your wall. No, it is a living, breathing agricultural clock, and it's tied directly to the physical environment of the Yangtze River Basin. It was quite literally born from thousands of years of observing the climate, the rising and falling of the river waters, and the very specific growth cycles of local crops in that exact region. Okay, so let's break down exactly what that means. The 24 solar terms essentially function as a highly detailed master guide for the entire year's agricultural life. By slicing the year into 24 distinct bite-sized segments, ancient farmers created a literal roadmap for survival and prosperity. It systematically dictates the 4 major phases of agrarian life. It tells you exactly when to begin spring plowing, the precise perfect window for summer planting, the optimal time for your autumn harvest, and that absolutely vital period for winter storing. Now, I don't know about you, but trying to memorize 24 highly specific, scientifically timed terms, yeah, that sounds a bit daunting. So to solve this, they created a beautifully simple mnemonic poem. It distills the whole year down like this. Spring awakens, grass and trees sprout. Heat rises, all things thrive. Cool breeze, abundant harvest. White snow, all things hibernate. It's just brilliant, right? By internalizing those 4 rhythmic lines, generations of farmers could effortlessly recall the entire flow of the year, carrying all this incredibly complex environmental data entirely in their heads. Section 1. Springtime and Agriculture, Awakening the Earth. The contrast between the seasons is incredible. You go from the icy, totally dormant grip of winter straight into vibrant new life. But as that wheel turns to spring, it's the specific solar terms that actually trigger human action. Take the term rainwater, for example. This isn't just a generic weather forecast. It marks the precise moment the river waters warm up and new shoots start sprouting. And right after that comes a truly critical term called grain rain. Just like it sounds, this is the exact crucial moment when rainfall becomes abundant enough to start planting early rice. The calendar is literally screaming at the farmer. The water is ready, get those seeds in the ground right now. All of this localized precision is just amazing to me. Actually, let me pause and ask you, does your country have a fixed farming schedule like this? When you look out your own window, do people generally plant crops in the spring where you live? Because depending on where you're sitting on the globe right now, your natural clock might look incredibly different from the Yangtze River Basin. All right, let's move on to Section 2, Global Farming Comparisons. Same planet, different rhythms. To really appreciate how unique this Chinese system is, we kind of need to zoom out, right? Let's look at the rest of the planet and compare some global climates. So as we established, the Yangtze River sits up in the northern hemisphere and enjoys 4 distinct, well-defined seasons. But if you look over at Vietnam, which is situated in a tropical zone, they don't have those 4 seasons at all. They operate entirely on a rhythm of dry and rainy seasons. Move on over to Mexico and you find this mild plateau climate. And then, of course, if you travel all the way down to Brazil in the southern hemisphere, the seasons are completely 100% inverted compared to China. So how does that actually play out in real life? Well, if we track the global spring planting calendar, we see that because Mexico has that mild plateau climate, their corn planting in March and April aligns almost perfectly with China's grain rain period. They are effectively operating on the exact same agricultural clock. But Vietnam, since they're waiting for their tropical rainy season to hit, they don't even start planting rice until May, which is more than a full month after the Yangtze River area has kicked off its spring farming. But the most wild contrast happens when you actually cross the equator. Up in the northern hemisphere, during the Chinese solar terms of spring, the Earth is rapidly warming, and farmers are rushing to get crops planted. Meanwhile, down in Brazil, it is autumn. The leaves are falling, the massive harvests are wrapping up, and the land is getting ready to rest. Spring farming in Brazil doesn't even happen until September through November. It is literally a total mirror image of the 24 solar terms system. This whole journey, from a single river basin in China all the way to the fields of Mexico, Vietnam, and Brazil, leaves us with a pretty profound final thought. The 24 solar terms aren't just a clever way to count days, they are a direct, undeniable reflection of the land itself. Which leaves us with this to ponder. How does geography fundamentally shape human culture and our very perception of time? If you lived in a place with absolutely no winter or totally reversed seasons, how would your culture story of time be written? Thank you so much for exploring the river of time with me today and this explainer. I really hope it changes the way you look at the changing seasons outside your own window.